So the next speaker is Sam Zaid, founder of Getaround, and I have a funny story around it. So the founder of the company I'm with now, Idea Market, and him were at Singularity, and so they were brainstorming around ideas. The original idea of Getaround was, hey, why don't we have drivers drive around with their cars? And it was voted down as a stupid idea. But good news is Getaround is awesome. If you haven't used it, you can rent Teslas and Porsches and all kinds of really cool cars from other people. Sam, come on down. Also want to introduce Sarah Burr from TechCrunch. She's awesome as well. Sarah and I actually met here 2 years ago when she was working with a startup. So thanks for making time, Sarah and Sam.
No, I met you before that.
No?
Yes.
First time was
No.
was here. Okay, anyway.
He's forgotten everything.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right.
Not your first time here.
Awesome.
Hey,
Hi.
how's it going?
It's going.
Good.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Sam.
Sharing economy, is that a thing?
Yes. I think sharing economy is a thing, and I think it's a big thing, and it's going to be a bigger thing.
Okay, it sounds like it. It's what you're actually doing, and this is the Airbnb model, Urban Sitter model, Getaround model. You're utilizing other people's property and things and people contributing to make money, to make a business, which is kind of almost this like Tom Sawyer, what I like to call this Tom Sawyer model, which sounds negative, but actually it's actually brilliant. You're providing the platform,
Right.
and getting other people to do the work.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was that easy. So we are providing the platform, but we also do a lot. So from things like trust and safety to building hardware to providing insurance, we try to make it really easy for people to think about their cars differently as something that maybe is not just a money sink, but that you can actually make money on. And so, I think, a lot of what these companies are doing is changing people's mindsets on how they use their time or how they utilize assets.
Yeah, I actually read somewhere recently that the average person on Getaround makes about $500 a month in their car.
Yeah, it depends where you are. Like if you're in that's about the average, but if you're like in sort of the core of San Francisco, you could easily be making, on average, probably $7,000, $8,000 a year. And then, if you're renting out a nicer car, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000.
I mean, you have a couple of Teslas on there.
Yeah, we have I don't know how many Teslas now, but I lost count.
Yeah, what are some of the cooler cars that people have that are on there?
It depends what you like. So for me personally, I like driving, a manual transmission faster car. So there's like a couple Audi R8s. There's M3, M4, Porsches. I don't know. So there's actually we actually don't really try to take that many sort of
luxury,
highline performance cars, just because we do want to eventually, but we want to actually package up a slightly different product for that. So we've actually turned down some of even the nicer cars than that, just because we're not quite ready for them.
Okay, cool. Speaking of working with the hardware, you recently changed things up. You had some new funding, and you were able to do things slightly differently. It used to be, when I first got on Getaround, it was a little bit more awkward. You had to reach out to the person, schedule to meet up, trade keys.
Yeah.
It was this weird, when you get on Craigslist and you're like, I'm going to look for an apartment or I'm going to buy something, and you have to meet with the person, and you're like, hey, I'll never see you again. Let's be friendly with each other. Kind of get to know each other. It's weird. Yeah. But you don't have to necessarily do that anymore.
You don't have to, and I would describe it maybe as awkward, but also, we had a lot of people build some really great friendships and relationships from those forced connections. But it was certainly friction, and so, I think basically 2 years ago, we really shifted the model to be instant, on demand, literally download our app, put in your driver's license, credit card, book a car, locate it, unlock the doors from your phone, drive.
Yeah.
And so, that was enabled by our hardware, which is our connected car hardware, and also some of the stuff we did to really automate identity verification.
I mean, that sounds kind of expensive. You're putting in new hardware into these, maybe potentially an older car, right? Is that?
Yeah, we control fleet quality, so we don't put in really, really old cars, but it's Expensive, it's relative. So if, we build and design the hardware, and the reason we did that is we wanted to really collapse the value chain so that we weren't paying, a hardware vendor who then, sells it to a VAR, who then sells it to like an integrator, and then like finally you can use this thing, and then you end up paying tons of money for it. So we just did a direct deal with AT&T for connectivity, and we built the hardware, and that allowed us to get the costs like actually down substantially, like 10 times cheaper.
That's kind of cool. You just use an app and you unlock a car.
That's right. Yeah.
Couldn't you use that for
Other stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could use it for a lot of stuff, but one thing at a time. We're a startup. We keep focused.
Okay.
But yes, you could. I mean, we have a lot of car owners asking us for whatever. Come clean my car and take it to the dealership, whatever. But which we could do because you can locate the car and you can unlock the doors. But it's not something we're focused on right now.
Yeah, and get a TaskRabbit to do something.
Yeah, you could totally leverage a sharing economy. It could be a total like sharing economy integration.
All back
play.
to that sharing economy. There might be something there. I don't know. So let's talk about the future of transportation.
Okay. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So.
You just asked me to spew the future.
Yes, please prognosticate for us. Where people started. I mean, you started this idea of people sharing their car back in Singularity University, right?
Yeah. So I mean, the genesis idea was we were thinking about the future of transportation.
Yeah.
There were a couple things that we really felt there were two macro trends with cars that would happen. One was that cars would become connected and internet enabled, which is happening, not as fast as, well, in our case, we don't care because we have our own device for doing this, but that was one macro trend. Then the other one was the self-driving autonomous car. And that, it's hard to say exactly what that world looks like if you just imagine all cars being fully connected and self-driving.
Yeah.
And
what does that do to Getaround? That's a totally different situation.
I don't know that we know the answer. What we do know is that, the idea that you would have a car and park it for 22 hours a day does not make sense. And so it makes a lot of sense that people would share access to transportation. Exactly what the ownership configuration is, whether right today, the ownership configuration is basically 1-to-1. For every person, there's one car. And so that doesn't make sense. So it should be 1-to-N. Exactly how that gets, what happens in the future, hard to say. Is it one company that owns every car, or is it like a lot of micro entrepreneurs that own these small fleets? And depending on how that plays out, it could be better or worse for us. But I think that's also something that you just got to be there to be able to make the right plays at that point in time.
Yeah. How are you helping with the future of transportation?
How are we helping? I think we're changing. I mean, we've done deals with Fiat, with Mercedes, recently with Audi, and I think we're changing how people think about car ownership. Certainly people on Getaround think about it very differently once they've been an owner for a while. So I think...
that's a mindset you definitely have to change. You're thinking, I'm going to let a total stranger,
yeah,
who I'm not doing the weird Craigslist-like assessment of, are you worthy to handle my stuff?
Right.
You're just kind of letting them open it with an app. That's a lot of trust.
We do assess everybody who comes through, so there's a lot of stuff that happens there. But you're right. I mean, to make it easy, it couldn't be that every time I wanted to rent a car, somebody says, well, tell me about where you grew up and who your friends are.
You do that already? Yeah, okay.
That would be your awkward thing, I think. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love meeting new people. Please don't hesitate to come and talk to me. It's admittedly awkward when you'll probably never see that person again. You just want to buy their guitar or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But sometimes it's serendipitous and you make a good friend.
Yeah.
So I think that's changing. And also we're working with car companies to change how they think about transportation. Ford is going through an exercise right now to figure out a bunch of experiments as to what their business model is going to be, 10 years from now. And are they selling cars or are they selling mobility? Who knows?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
What made you want to do cars?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was just when we looked at transportation back in 2010, when we were thinking about these ideas, it just seemed massively inefficient. Obviously, as a major, contribution to CO2 and pollution. Cars were, we basically waste 6 billion car hours per day in the United States. Like, we just sit there parked. It could be utilized. So massively inefficient, huge investment.
I mean, was
so-
the parking situation in San Francisco a contributing?
No, because we started in Mountain View, actually.
Okay.
Was where we were, at least when we eventually relocated to San Francisco. But
Okay.
it was more that it was just, it felt like that needed to change and the system wasn't sustainable. And that, thinking about the future and connectivity and autonomous cars, it just felt like transportation was going to change. And so we wanted to do something in it. We actually talked about various different things in it. And then also,
What was
I
the
think
reaction when
I
you
personally
first-
like cars and
Yeah.
for me, it's great. I mean, I can actually drive a different car depending on what I'm trying to do now. So if I want to go to Napa, I can get a convertible, and there's a lot of convertible 3 Series or like Audis, and I can rent that. And I came down here, I rented a small little Fiat Abarth, which is like this turbocharged manual transmission car. It was fun to ride, right? So I don't know, sometimes I rent a pickup truck if I'm moving something, and so it's handy, and I'm not pinned to one particular car all the time.
Yeah. Do you how often do you rent out cars on Getaround?
As a user,
Yeah, as a user.
yeah, it's a good question. I'm probably, because I'm working a lot of the time, I'm probably I know I'm less than our average, but I'm probably maybe 3 to 4 times a month.
Okay. Yeah. When you first started Getaround, people told you were crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what? I mean, why do you think they had that reaction?
I think because it was a little bit of a hard problem. So if you think about it, what are the hurdles? Well, obviously one big hurdle was insurance. Like, we actually created a totally new type of insurance product. At the time, there was not much, sharing economy didn't exist. Insurance companies were really never making new products for startups. And so, that was one big hurdle. Then we wanted to build hardware. And, I think people say hardware is the new software now, but hardware was just hardware back then. And so we had to build hardware. And then we had to convince people to actually let strangers use their cars.
Right.
And so those were 3 big hurdles.
How do you, because even now, even with the insurance program, convincing people, how do you convince people to allow people that are maybe never going to meet to use and operate their car?
I mean, I don't think we convince people anymore. I think people hear about it from a friend, or they see it, and so it's a little bit more legitimate now than back then. And so that helps. I mean, obviously we do some convincing, but it's not like this totally abstract thing. I think the other thing we try to do, and we're trying to do more and more of, is just provide more and more value. So if we can provide more value to you as a car owner on Getaround, to the point that it's easier for you to share your car than it is to manage yourself, then that's a lot of value, and you're making money. And so we just figured the more we push in that direction, the more people will get on board.
Where do you operate now? You're obviously in San Francisco.
Yeah, so we've
New
been
York. Yeah.
We're not in New York.
You're not in New York. Oh, there's a problem in New York. That's right. We can talk about them a little bit. But yes.
We're not in New York yet. We might be. But so we did San Francisco basically since we launched Instant, which was about 2 years ago, March of 2013. We've been largely in San Francisco, and then in the last couple months, we've started opening up new markets. So we opened up Portland. We're currently launching DC. If anyone's gonna be in DC, we have a great launch party later this year, or later this month.
I used to live in DC, and I used to use Zipcar to get my groceries because I didn't have a car there.
Yep.
They have a really good metro system.
Yep.
But I would use Zipcar back in the day
Yeah.
to get, so now you're going to be in DC as well.
Yeah, so we're gonna be there, and then we have a couple more we haven't announced yet that we're working on.
Do you see yourself, how do you compete with other things like Uber and Zipcar and these other car sharing startup platforms? Well, Zipcar's not really a startup anymore, but these
Yeah,
other
it's more
car
like
sharing platforms.
more like Avis and Enterprise.
Yeah, right. Well, Avis, they bought, yeah.
2 different questions, I guess, versus Avis and Enterprise. The Enterprise launched car sharing in San Francisco recently. We think we've got a sustainable position. Like, we have more cars, more locations, cheaper prices, better variety. So, and it's easier. No fees, no sign-up fees, nothing.
What do you say though? Because I got rid of my car a couple years ago because I realized that I could either take public transportation, or it cost me about the same for parking, gas, insurance, cart maintenance and everything to just take an Uber
Yep.
in the city.
Yeah.
So I got rid of my car. I was like, you know what? It's easier. I'll just get a driver, and I won't have to worry about parking issues. I won't have to worry about that. What would you say to someone like me who sees Uber as an alternative?
That's great.
But what like, I mean,
Yeah. So I think you're sort of a great customer for us because you probably use Uber a lot.
Yes.
And you use it to get around the city all the time.
all the time.
Yeah. And the next time you need to get out of the city, it gets trickier.
That is much trickier.
So,
yes.
but now you don't have a car.
Yeah.
So
The
so
train
actually,
is not fun.
So actually, like I think the consumer is shifting towards consuming transportation from the phone, right? And obviously, I use Uber, I use Lyft. I think they're great products, but they don't satisfy all of my use cases. And there are a lot of them, especially once you start using, you get that freedom of having a car. You realize, oh, I could do this, I could do that, and these are things that I may not have tried to do before, or that you used to do maybe when you had a car, but now you don't anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I love Uber and I love Lyft. They're really good services. But this morning I spent about 25 minutes trying to help my Uber driver figure out how to get on the freeway, which was really annoying.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Yeah. I was like, no, the Fox Theater is not in the city. Please look at the map.
Yeah.
On your phone. It's in there. Please. So that's one thing that you probably solve. Yes. Talk about New York and the insurance situation there. What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, just one of the obviously for us, we provide insurance and it's full primary auto insurance, and so insurance is a regulated industry for good reason, traditionally, and so it's regulated at the state level. So we have insurance in 49 states.
Okay.
One we don't.
Yes. Why do you think that is?
And that is just that New York, for a lot of this, New York is very heavy on regulation. They're just sort of different. It's true in ride sharing. It's true for us in car sharing in terms of the insurance side. And so, they just have, I don't know, they're just different that way.
Where are you at in that process? Is there hope?
Yeah, we have a bill that's been put forward right now.
Yeah.
So
okay.
we'll see how that goes. But
what's your feeling on that?
Well, it goes up and down. I mean, generally we're very positive on it, but then again, the Senate Majority Leader in New York just got brought on corruption charges, and so there's just a lot of politics that go on in New York that you have to manage.
It's funny because what you're doing is, anytime an industry comes in and radically changes things, we've seen this with airports throughout the country not allowing Uber and Lyft, or having to work out special deals with them. Zenefits had problems in Utah, of all places, which is supposed to be extremely business friendly.
Yeah.
But the insurance commissioner there had a problem with them taking money away from him and all his insurance peddling friends. So we see this a lot with the sharing economy, quote unquote sharing economy, or with new disruptive services. Do you think it's just a matter of getting new regulation in? Do you think it's just, is there, what's the fear around this?
I don't know if I think it's just change. We've had it too. I mean, we work closely with the city of San Francisco now, but for a while, they were like, well, we don't really consider you car sharing. We're like, okay, well.
That's kind of actually the definition of what you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're doing, but it's not the traditional definition.
Okay.
So, we've had some challenges there too, but a lot of it is just, I think, a process of education. And, if you're moving pretty fast, you don't always have time to educate regulators on why this is potentially a good thing.
What do you see as potential challenges for you in the future? What are you coming up against now? And you may have a solution for those already, I don't know, but what do you see coming up ahead?
Yeah, well, our main focus right now is just expansion into new markets. And so I think a lot of the challenges are the same challenges that we've faced here, but now just multiplied out, N times as we open up in new markets and new states. And so a lot of it is just getting really good at what we figured out once or twice and being able to do it many more times.
Yeah, Google, and also, going back to the self-driving car, we know Google's working on that.
Yeah.
Uber's rumored to be working on that.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, everybody's rumored to be working on it.
Yeah. Do you have any designs on getting into that space?
I don't have any comments on that, but we're not working on anything.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. You've been really great to talk with.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Good. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
I didn't even